I was thinking there are times sometime at a parenting conference where you might ask me a question that involves maybe some real complex dynamics, like more than I can learn from talking to you about your kid. And on those times, sometimes I will recommend, hey, why don't you find somebody locally and talk to them about it? And I never want that recommendation to feel bad to anybody. Like, we asked an innocent question in the parenting conference, and you sent us to therapy, right? That's not what I'm doing. Basically, what I see therapy as is more like a consultation, especially regarding parenting coaching. Kind of like going to a financial advisor in the good way, unlike the bad way we talked about last night, where somebody can actually, let's unfold all your money situation and see what's going on, and have somebody who could do a more comprehensive job than me at a conference in answering your question. So if I do go that direction with you, that's why, and don't feel like, oh my gosh, you must really think we're screwed up or something. No, I want you to see a consultant and really unpack the question in a more responsible way than I can here. By the way, just a little tip, I alluded to this last night. The typical orientation of therapists who work with children is to not work with the parents too. I don't know why that is. I don't know what the deal is. To me, that's like you bring me your little sick goldfish out of the goldfish bowl, and you bring it in my office, and I clean all the algae off of him or something, and then I hand him back to you, and guess what? You're going to throw him in the same goldfish bowl. I mean, what is the point of us cleaning the fish off? All right, so if you're going to be looking for a therapist, one of the things to help you consult with your kids, I would really recommend you look for somebody who's going to work with you, because there's so much power that parents have in the lives of children, and find a therapist who's going to utilize that power and not say, just drop him off and he'll be ready in 50 minutes. That's a waste of time in my book, okay? All right, welcome back. Good morning. I hope you rested. I did. Last night we talked about 7 things that I think kids need in order to do life, and 7 things that they need in order to mirror the image of God, and therefore 7 things we might want our children to develop, right? I want you heads up. I want you thinking strategically. I want you having a grid. So when, Nathan Jr. socks his friend Sammy, you'll have more to bring to the party than, we'll hit him back. You can kind of think, what might be going on here for Nathan Jr.? Do we need to set some limits on him? Is there an emotional stuff we need to put some words on and make sense of? Maybe Sammy needs to learn more about strength. But I want you kind of strategic. This is not a parenting advice seminar. This is your guide. We talked about 7 of them last night. I'm going to look at 2 of them in detail this morning, 2 that are very important to me. And this one, of course, is, the one all parents want to know about, and that is, how do we teach them responsibility? How do we get them to choose well? How do we get them to do what we say? How do we get Godzilla out of Tokyo? All right? And secondly, this morning, as I told you, we're going to look at what does it look like to relate to kids and get them grounded in love, right? All right, let's look at discipline. This is answering those core questions that we alluded to last night of, why can't I just do anything I want? Why do I have to do what you say? Okay? So I want to show you what I believe and I have found is a very, very powerful way to intervene in the lives of your kids, both in terms of getting them to be obedient to you, but also in terms of helping prepare them for adulthood. And actually, I came up with this model of discipline to manage my own anger. Remember I told you I struggled with anger when I was a parent? I would tell them to do this and they wouldn't do it, and so I would escalate and I'd be screaming, and before you know it, it was like, I said get in the tub, and they're crying and I'm yelling, and it's kind of fun for the whole family, right? Just like Leave It to Beaver. So I thought, there's got to be a better way, man. You're a shrink, figure this out. So I did, and I'm going to teach it to you, all right? So here you are, this loving parent, and everything's going great as long as you do their bidding. And then you do something stupid, like take them to the grocery store. You fools, what are you thinking? At the grocery store, every little angel turns into, Carlos the Jackal, international terrorist. It's like, you will buy me this worthless gum, or I will scream so loud that everyone will hear the cries of my people, and they sort of have you over the barrel in the grocery grocery store, right? Basically, they don't like the reality of things. They don't like limits. They don't like telling you no. And as I said, we can address the kid with the opposite problem. What do you do with the child who's always compliant, always does what you say, aside from getting on your knees and thanking the Lord? What do you do to kind of help that child being too compliant? But most kids don't like the reality of things. And once they reach about 18 months, 2 years, they kind of require us to set limits on them just to be people we can stand being around. All right? In other words, there's two reasons we discipline. This is kind of off the record, but we discipline for two reasons. One is help the kids learn to make good choices and be wise adults and blah, blah, blah. And the other reason that we discipline children is to make them people we can stand being around. For real. Okay? There's no, like, commandment about not sitting in the back of the minivan going na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na all the way back from Florida. But if you let them do that, you will hate them by the time you get home, okay? So you do have a responsibility to parent your children in a way that makes them people you can enjoy being around. I remember one Saturday, I took the 3 girls just out for the day on Saturday. I told Norma, I said, enjoy your Saturday. I'm going to take them. We're just going to play. I'm going to be, Disneyland dad. So we went and rode go-karts, and we went to tons of fun, this place where there's just, games and stuff. We went to the mall. They like to go, three girls, right? They like to go to the department stores at the mall and try on the perfume samples, So the car smelled like a Seraglio on the way home, but, it was like they're lathered up in all these, perfumes. Anyway, and we went and had pizza. Did I already say that? And we did all these fun things. And so we're on our way home, and I pull in the parking lot of the cleaners. I had some shirts at the cleaners. And they're like, where are we going? What are we doing? And I said, I got to pick up my cleaners. And they're like, no, we don't want the cleaners. I'm like, oh my gosh, we had this great afternoon. I go to the cleaners, and it's like everything falls apart. I pull up in front of the cleaners, going and get my cleaning, and I'm coming out, and the windows are all rolled up, so you can't hear them, but you can see their faces in the car. Like that. They're in absolute misery at this horrible thing I've done to them. So I get home, and Norma's like, what happened? Like, I went to the cleaners. Anyway, that's what my children were like, okay? In other words, if I didn't think about setting limits to protect myself, too, from them, sometimes we settle. Some people will say, how long do you go in an incorrigible, power struggle-y, hard, strong-willed child, how long do they go in timeout? And I'm like, well, the first time, 15, 20 minutes. The second time, maybe an hour. And the third time, until you want to see them again, okay? So part of the discipline piece is to take care of you, all right? So it would be great if we could just be nice to them, but they'll take advantage of that because they're little gangsters. So, as Al Capone said, you can get a lot with kindness. You can get more with kindness and a gun. So today we're going to talk about the gun. We're going to bring the noise, okay? So how do we set discipline? How do we set limits on them and do discipline? Let's create some themes, some principles first. Kind of basic version, and you're going to hear it, and you're going, yeah, but what if they blah, blah, blah? And I want you to do that, because then you will help me in Q&A come back and put more meat on these bones, all right? But skeleton first. The model I'm about to tell you works best straight out of the box for parenting age kids, 5 to 12 or so. With attenders, as we said, we got to be more hands-on. When they take the Coke and you see them, working to pour the whole Coke all the way upside down. It's not like, if you continue to do that, you're going to time out. You got to jump on them and grab the Coke can. There's that tender hands-on piece. What we said last night, that you live in that place of restraint. But you can begin teaching them this, begin developing the theme, all right? With over 12, we're going to have to integrate in some of the adolescent baggage, which I'll be glad to do during some Q&A. But the principles are the same. So here's the question. How do we help our kids learn? Operative word being learn, remember. We can't make them, control them. How do we help them learn to make good choices in their lives later on? And how do we make it more likely that they're going to do what we ask right now? Now, as we mentioned last night, one of the ways that people have addressed this question of how do we get our kids to do what we want is by coddling. And the last 2 generations of parents are a lot into this. We don't really feel like we can speak authority into the lives of our children. My generation raised the millennials. You're welcome. Um, and this next generation, too, y'all's generation, tends to not want to be good, strong authorities in their lives of their kids. Coddling is sort of good cop, okay? We're sort of all friends, all right? So they're throwing plates at the neighbor's house. Like in Raisin, Arizona, like, mind you don't cut yourself, Mordecai, remember? Anyway, they're throwing plates, and we're like, hey, amigo, didn't we talk about this? Or we're at home, we're like, hey, buddy, you want to pick up your toys, okay? Like, okay? Like we're asking his permission, And that's kind of the coddling approach of, hey, buddy, Another one I like for coddling is what I call the good cop, better cop, team parent approach. And it goes like this. Since coddling parents don't feel like they can tell their kids to do things, they often feel like they need to sort of sell it, sort of spin it for them, all right? And the good cop, better cop, basically first cop poses a proposition, and the second parent swings in enthusiastically to encourage it. It goes like this. Okay, guys, in a minute we're going to take a bath. A bath. You know that one? So we're not going to spend a lot of time on the coddling piece because basically you've abdicated all your authority. So, we're not even talking about persuasion. Option number 2, we're going to spend a little bit more time on because it's everybody's ultimate default when we're frustrated. And that is control. Control is where we issue the command. Remember Billy and touching his brother at the table last night? So, control is I issue a command. Tell them to go clean out their room. Stop hitting the heirloom furniture with a plastic golf club. Screaming and running around the house in a ballerina tutu. Come in by 11:30. Pick your war zone, all right? Now, what are they going to do when you do that? If they're red-blooded American children. Let's stick with the clean room. You basically tell them to clean their room. What are they going to do? Basically, within a control model, which most of us degenerate to, what the child's response is to move towards some form of refusing. In other words, what are they going to do? You tell them to clean their room. They're going to do nothing. Just stare like there's a gas leak. They're going to pick up 2 things and go, I cleaned it. All right? They're going to go, this is not fair. She didn't have to clean hers. They're going to go, why? As if, you don't have a cogent, persuasive reason the deal is off, My office manager, I talk with her a lot about my talks and things like that. I was talking to her about this one. And she said, my kids would go, but I don't want to. And she said, I would always say to them, that's okay. You don't have to want to. Anyway, I just always love that. All right, so here's where we often get. We want them to do something. They're going to refuse passively or aggressively or whatever. They're going to refuse. Remember, board meeting, elect themselves chairman. They want to do it their way. Now, at that point, what does control do? What is our part in this waltz? Basically, as a parent, if you're living in a control model, is we're now going to escalate. In other words, as we said last night, we're going to issue the command more loudly, or we're going to argue, or we're going to threaten, or we're going to say it louder, or we're going to use their whole name. John, Lowry, Cox, you get in here. We're going to count. I love counting. Like date night with Steve Carell and Tina Fey. He comes home and she's like, the child, she's incorrigible. I can't hear her do anything. He's like, well, did you 1, 2, 3 her? She says, yeah, 1, 2, 3 her. And even that didn't work, Anyway, counting. We say, I'm not going to tell you again. One time my mom said that to me. She said, you do this, I'm not telling you again. And you've learned I'm kind of a smart aleck. I said, good. Things are looking up. Okay, don't ever say that. Safety tip, kids. There's a scar right here. No. All right, anyway. Within the model of control, these are the tools of the trade, guys. Escalation and refusal. Refusal and escalation. And they're the coin of the realm, all right? And don't look now, but the room still isn't clean. And that's because control doesn't work. Because ultimately, if you think about it, you can't really make anybody do anything. How do you make a 2-year-old take a nap? How do you make a 6-year-old be polite at grandma's? if you really get down to it, it's hard to make them do anything. Now, the reason why, and the reason why we've gotten to this place and what this has created, as they say in Cool Hand Luke, what we got here is a failure to communicate, all right? And it's called a power struggle. And I want you to understand power struggles. Battle of your will against theirs. Now, the power struggle is the natural habitat of the creature known to biologists as the American child, okay? And it is officially defined as two parts. Your child challenges your authority, and you attempt to prove it, thereby acknowledging that your authority is questionable, okay? Two parts. Child questions, and you go, oh, yeah? By golly, young lady, I will show you. And the moment you step into that position, you're toast, okay? I promise, if you play power struggle, you will lose. It's hasta lasagna, don't get any on you. You will lose either by their winning and not cleaning their room, ever, and not doing what you say, and you have an honest-to-goodness south of the border coup d'etat on your hands. You're living with the Cardassians. Or you will lose by you winning. But you won by being bigger and louder and meaner and shamier and more authoritarian-y, and now you forced them through a big shouting match in the family, or you stomping and being the big dad who runs everything. And the room may get clean, but everyone's exhausted and resentful, and their takeaway is not, wow, I'm going to learn to make better choices. It's, boy, I'm scared of Dad. Boy, I'm mad at Dad. Boy, I'll win next time. Just wait till I'm big enough to get out of this house. Or the opposite, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, I promise I'll never upset you ever again. Okay? And no takeaway about learning to make good choices as an adult in reality. Okay? So, control's not going to achieve our goal. And it's not where I want them by college. In fact, what I have seen, if we live in a control authoritarian position with children making them, is we only get one of three options. And that is, number one, we create a child who is compliant. In other words, if I asked you without thinking, what do you want your children to do? You'd go on to do what I say. Okay, great. That's right, and that's fun when you're proud of your little soldier at grandma's. But how are the compliant adults doing in life, remember? A child who learns to just always do everything you tell them without any pushback, they're not equipped enough. I see so many spouses. I saw one yesterday for a first session, and her husband wouldn't come because he's a bully in the relationship, and they think it's a bunch of psychobabble, and the bullies rarely come to therapy. Who comes to therapy is the more oppressed spouse, as you remember from our last conference. And I'm like, so what's it like when you push back on him? Oh, God, I don't know. I can't push back on him. He'll get angry. And she's in this sort of compliant position. Don't upset the scary dad figure, okay? That's not where we want our kids. Or you get a rebel. And with a rebel, it's like you draw the line in the sand, you play the power struggle, you go, son, you're going to do what I want, and he's like, make me. You draw the line in the sand, he is glad to cross it. And you see this with, school-age kids who are the strong-willed, and you see it with a lot of teenagers. And with teens especially, we see sort of an escalating power struggle here. They sneak out of the house, so I'm nailing that window shut. So now they make a meth lab in the basement. I mean, they kind of take this as far as they need to, okay? You're in the power struggle world, all bets are off, all right? In fact, one of the things, a lot of times when parents say nothing we're doing is working, what we need to do is dig a little bit, because what is happening is taking place within the context of control, and nothing works there. That's what somebody asked me a question the other night and said, we tried that and it doesn't work. And I said something like, well, then let's give up trying to get him to actually do what you want and just settle with, let's help him face the consequences. In other words, step one with that kind of situation is to get out of the who's going to win this scenario. I'll tell you more about it in a second, but that's what I was meaning last night with I don't have a dog in this fight. You don't have to clean your room. Here's the cost for you. You decide. I'll go with you either way. And you stop the power struggle piece. If you don't, you're going to end up with one of these three options. Third option being sneak. See this one a lot. And this is where they make you think that you're winning. They make you think that they're complying. Your little angel, she's a compliant one. Oh, but then you find like emails they're writing their boyfriend in which they're doing stuff like they do on Cinemax. Or like I have a friend who was raised a very strict Baptist, and her family would only let her listen to Christian music, but she loved like Prince and AC/DC and Quiet Riot and all that kind of stuff. Bon Jovi. So what she did was she got her Amy Grant cassette cases and put in, hair bands. So you look at it, it's like, oh, Amy Grant's My Father's Eyes, but inside it's the classic album Slippery When Wet. It's like that's kind of how she lived. So sneak. All right, here's a little bit of a sideline, but it's important because all of us parents deal with it, and as I've told you, I dealt with it. One of the other problems with control is that anger is usually involved in control. Let's talk about anger just a little bit. Anger and discipline. Number one, just to understand anger a bit, secret of the universe, anger is what we do when we don't feel powerful. Okay? We mentioned this in the marriage conference, but anger is a secondary emotion. It is an emotion I feel second. In other words, if I feel angry, my question with one of my clients is, I wonder what you were feeling first. Think about it. You're in a hurry to a job interview. You miss every red light. You top the hill, and it's green. And right as you get to it, it changes red, and you go, ugh, and you're angry, right? No, you're not. You were scared you're going to miss the interview. You're frustrated because you're helpless, and you can't make the lights be green for you. You feel small, vulnerable feelings. You feel helpless. Your wife tells a stupid story about you at a party, and it embarrasses you. She gets in the car, and you say, what are you telling that story about me? Oh, my gosh. You're angry, right? No. You felt ashamed, humiliated. If you want to understand anger, understand the weak, vulnerable feeling that it's covering. So, do the math. Why might we feel angry in our parenting? Well, if you're trying to control your kids, I guarantee you're going to feel angry because you're trying to do something that's impossible. And if you're a failure at something that's impossible, cheer up, okay? But most of us get angry like I'm frustrated because I can't make these children do what I want. So anger is this thing we feel when we don't feel powerful. And if you're not careful, it'll corrupt your discipline. Why? Number one, it can make discipline personal, okay? In other words, it turns discipline into punishment. Notice I have not used the word punishment in this conference, and I will not. I make this distinction. Merriam-Webster dictionary may not, but for me, punishment is retaliation and payback for a past crime. You owe this. I'm mad at you. Punishment is a retaliation. Discipline is education for the future. In other words, I kept forgetting my lunch at work for a season. And so I would go across the street, which happens to have my favorite restaurant in town is across the street from my office. So that's where I'd end up eating lunch all the time. And I thought, wow, John, you're a shrink. Wonder why you keep forgetting your lunch. All right, so I needed discipline. I made a new rule. If I forgot my lunch, my office is at a hospital. I can go over eat at the hospital cafeteria. All right, well, I'm like sticky notes on everything, remembering my lunch. I was disciplined. We're all disciplined. And that's the model behind teaching our children. Are you a bad guy, John, for not bringing your lunch? No, I needed to learn. And as I told you last night, irresponsible people only learn through what? An event. Try eating lunch at the hospital cafeteria. It's an event, all right? Learn, baby, learn, okay? So, punishment is retaliation for a crime. Discipline is education for the future. And punishment often has an anger element to it. Discipline has a kindness element to it. Christ took our punishment, God's anger, his wrath that is due. Punishment is due, sinners, and it's been taken. So now, a la Hebrews, God disciplines those he loves. Why? Because discipline is what makes us form our character. It's what teaches us how to be more Christ-like. It helps us make wise choices. You feel the biblical connection here? So anger moves discipline into punishment really quickly, all right? Number two, I think this one is cool. Secret of the Universe number 36 and a half. There's an inverse relationship between how angry you are and the effectiveness of your discipline, okay? In other words, to the degree that you finally snap and are like, I am sick of this. Every TV in this house is going off. Every piece of electronics is shutting down. You guys are in the Stone Age. All right, now what's your child's takeaway? Well, Mom is going off. All right? Did you learn anything? Yeah, don't tick Mom off, okay? Now, to the degree your anger drops, oh, dude, I told you if you left your bike out in the rain again, I was going to lock it up in the garage for a couple of days, and look what I found out in the rain. I'm sorry, man. I don't have a dog in this fight, remember? It's not my bike. It's my garage. So as my anger drops, what's his takeaway? God, I lost my bike in the rain. All right? As my anger drops, the effectiveness and power of my discipline increases. So this is huge. All right, I want to look at a different way of discipline. It's not about coddling your kids, not about controlling your kids, but by helping them learn to control themselves by learning what it means to choose based on events and learning from the cost of that. And learning what things lead to good things and what things lead to bad things and choosing wisely. That's a lot of what wisdom means as it relates to choices. Can I see the truth and let that impact the choices I make? Or am I a fool, like James says, and I look at my face in the mirror and I just turn away. I don't learn anything from what I'm seeing. God calls this wisdom, all right? And this bugs people sometimes, but this approach to discipline is not necessarily going to give you immediate obedience on this occasion. It's for teaching, remember? It's not for controlling. The only thing that can possibly get you immediate obedience on this occasion today, before your child learns this, is control. And that's only if they're compliant, okay? So here's today's sort of Zen grasshopper moment, all right? The only way that kids learn to obey is by disobeying and learning from the consequences of that, all right? I was doing a parenting talk for a local school on discipline and talking about, consequences in your children and their choices and all that. And I go to the dentist, and the dental hygienist is cleaning my teeth. And she's got all her instruments down in my mouth. And she said, I went to that conference you did at Jackson Academy. I'm like, okay. And she says, that thing about discipline, that doesn't work. I'm like, all right. And she's like, yeah. I told Billy that if he, didn't go to bed right now, he would lose TV. And he didn't go to bed. And I'm like, well, and so, you know how those conversations go. But when she took all the junk out of my mouth, I said, actually, no, work is not the question. Did he lose his TV? Did he have the opportunity to suffer some based on his choice? That's the key. And if we can get your anger and power struggle and need to make what you want happen right now and all that out of the way, all things being equal, if they run into yuck, they do learn. They can deduct, okay? So don't be discouraged by disobeying, especially if you get out of this power struggle model. Disobedience is not your failure in your discipline. It's school. As long as they, in as unangry a way as possible, reap the consequences, you're learning, okay? So I'm going to start teaching you this by giving you some examples, and then we can build off of that, and I'll try to give you kind of a model and be thinking, because we'll do some Q&A as soon as I'm done. But here's the strategy. Discipline problems are basically because you want something, they do the in-your-face no to you, passively or directly, and you'll find them sort of, they'll throw down, I'm not going to do what you want. And what we're going to do is we're going to work to change that conflict from you versus your child, or they're going to do what you want or not, to them versus their reality versus their consequences, all right? And if we can get our anger and control out of the way, I find we do this, it can learn, all right? So what does that sound like? Here's one of my favorites. Bonnie's my youngest. The other two had gone off to college. She was probably 16 or 17 and was the only one living at the house. So the three of us would have meals often. So we were eating one evening and finished dinner, and we get up, and Norm and I start scraping the plates and cleaning the kitchen, and Bonnie sashays through and starts to head upstairs to her room. And I said, whoa, Bonnie, will you come down and help us clean up the kitchen? And she said, "Are you on pills?" And walks up the stairs. All right. Now, notice the feeling you're having right now. Bookmark it. That feeling. We're going to come back to it. That's one of the most important feelings in your discipline, that, oh my gosh, how dare she? Or that sort of outrage, like, tell us about how you went upstairs and, as my mother used to say, jerked a knot in her. All right? You know the feeling? That helpless, oh my gosh, how dare a child do that? I want to go let them have it. What just gauche? Just reviling. You just feel that resentment of it. Of course, none of us would ever act that way, right? But you as a parent, bookmark that feeling. It's a huge important. That's one of the ways you can tell you're in a power struggle, that feeling. You feel the disturbance in the force, okay? You can know that by that feeling, okay, they've challenged my authority, and something in me is like, what do I do? And I had this thought, what do I do? Do I go upstairs and go, young lady, you will not talk to your mother-in-law like that. You get downstairs. Now, how's that going to go? Remember, I began last night talking about authority is this thing that we got to be careful about, and submission is this thing that we're taught, and discipline not being out of control. If I move up there and try to control her into coming down and submitting, best case scenario, she'll come down and go, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. But what's going to happen to her heart? What is she going to learn? I didn't really know how to handle it because I was angry. I was outraged. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. So, as you'll see in a minute, the first thing I did was took a time out. Remember the conflict talk on marriage? Step one, take a time out. This is golf, not tennis. There's no hurry. For better and for worse, she ain't going anywhere. Okay? She's not leaving. Think, John, how can this cost her? We're going to change the power struggle. How do I make her treat us with respect? Can't do that. How do I let this cost her? To the degree I took a time out, my anger can come down, which means the effectiveness of my discipline is going to go up. And I thought, got it. I took her keys, put them in my pocket. So I'm sitting in my enormous room. We're watching TV or something, and about 30 minutes later, you can hear her clacking down the stairs in her, like, tall Barbie shoes, and you can smell her before you see her. It's like, God. And I hear her clinking around on the keychain, and unsuccessfully. And she goes, oh my gosh, where are my keys? And I said, I've got them. And she came in and she's like, I need my keys. I'm going to Chris's. And I said, are you on pills? I left some dishes for you. You finish up the dishes, and you can have your keys back. All right? So this is kind of your takeaway. If you relate to your mom and I like you did, I can promise you it goes around, comes around. So I would really invite you to think differently about how you engage us. All right? Now, no fuss, no muss. If you can manage all that junk in yourself and go and think, you can teach them something here. Okay, let's go back to the dirty room. How do you make them clean up their room? What did we say last night? You don't have to clean up your room. The TV doesn't come on till you clean up your room. You can read the classics, as we said. And mine would always go, oh my gosh, but Saved by the Bell's about to come on. And they would just start scrambling. Here's another one I like with clean up the room. Somebody was talking to me about a littler child who wouldn't put up their toys. Here's one we used to use. You don't want to clean up your room? That's fine. I don't have a taco in this enchilada platter. Okay? We'll just try to use every one of those we can today, okay? Say dog in the fight, taco and enchilada platter, horse in that race, whatever. I'll clean it up. I'll clean up your room. I mean, the room needs to be clean. So if you're not going to do it, I'll be glad to. Deal is this. Anything I pick up goes in the Sunday box till Sunday. Knock yourself out. So they're usually fine with that at first, laying in their bed, playing on their phone, or watching TV, or whatever, as you clean up their room. And they're like, housekeeping, like you missed a spot, and they're good with it. Until tomorrow, when there's a soccer game, and they can't find their cleats. Oh, your cleats are in the Sunday box till Sunday. I'll be glad to clean your room, but anything I pick up goes in the Sunday box till Sunday. And then you have it back. And you can decide whether you want to clean your own room up or not. Or I'll clean it up every week. It's up to you. How can it cost them? That's the question. This can be simple stuff. One time when Bonnie was little, she was sick, and she needed, that red medicine, the little kids get. It's always red. And so Norma says, Bonnie, come take your medicine. And Bonnie's about, 4 or 5 at this time. And she goes scampering. I'm sitting on the steps, the ones that Bonnie came down in the last story. I'm sitting on the steps, and she scampers up the steps and disappears upstairs. And Norma said to me, what she often will say to me, go make them clean up their rooms. Or in this case, make Bonnie come down and take her meds. All right, now you tell me, how do you make her come down and take her meds? You guys have little kids. When you try to make them take their meds and you sort of hold them down, it's like waterboarding, and you're squirting red juice in them and they're spraying it all over. How does that go? So I had to think. You got to think. Parents feel on the spot. Oh my gosh, they won't get ready for school. What do we do? Take your time. Golf, not tennis. All right, we'll talk about that in a second. But I told Bonnie, I said, Bonnie, she didn't answer. I said, I'm not going to come drag you out from under the bed, but here's the deal. You go to timeout, and you can come out of timeout when you're ready to take your medicine. And that can be today, tomorrow, the next day, whatever. That's up to you. All right? So parents then go, well, what if they just won't go to timeout? I'm like, okay. I just know that I run their life, and I own their life. And they're not going to get anything from me until they pay me the timeout they owe me. So later on, at some point, she's going to want a bedtime story for bed. I'm like, you give me your timeout and I'll let you do this. We can layer these disciplines. And what if they say, well, I'm not going to go to bed? Okay. Well, yeah, but we can figure this out. Don't let that stump you. All right? I want you to think about the cost. Grounding for grades. With kids who are older, I use this all the time at the office. They won't study, they won't study, they won't study. And sure, you can get them tested and find out if there's ADD or whatever going on. What I've set up 100 times is for the kid who's just lazy and doesn't want to study, we get the grade report on Thursday, and the parents decide. You can have 1 C, 2 Cs, parents get to decide. All A's and 1 B, I don't know. What do you think your kid's able to do? Now, if they have more than the 1 C, then they're grounded for the weekend. Okay? Now, on that weekend that you're grounded, you can't go do anything or be with friends. But you know what? You don't need to study. We are not going to stand over you and make you study the rest of your life. You don't study. Don't have a cactus in that desert. I don't know. I'm running out of them here. You guys are going to have to help me. But remember, there's always next weekend. That's up to you. We're changing the conflict from them versus you to them versus their choices. All right? One time, Callie, when she was a teenager, she woke up late on a Saturday. I'm like, good morning. And she's like, oh. Later on, she starts to leave the house. I'm like, what you up to? Oh, I'm going to Elizabeth's. Okay. She comes back from Elizabeth's. How's Elizabeth? Fine. All right. Feel the feeling again? As a parent of a teenager especially, you feel this like, how dare you be such a jerk to me? All right? Don't do that. You start a power struggle. Wait. They need you. Just wait. I alluded to this last night. So about 3 o'clock, she comes downstairs and it's like, Daddy, will you fix my necklace? And I said, absolutely, honey. I'd be glad to fix your necklace. But would you tell me why I might want to fix your necklace given how you've treated me all day? Okay, what goes around comes around. This doesn't even have to be misbehavior. I told one of mine she couldn't hit the tennis ball against the garage door because it had big plate glass windows in it. And she disobeyed me, and she kept hitting the tennis ball against the garage door. She broke the window. I was enraged, and I started thinking, why am I so mad? Because I've now ruined my whole day. I'm going to have to go and get new glass cut and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, then what would make me not angry? And I thought, for her to pay for it. And I thought, excellent. So this is a punishment. I told her, I said, we're going to cancel everything you're doing today, like party, the birthday party, the skating rink, the whatever, because you and I got to fix the door. I want these natural consequences to happen, all right? Jerk at grandma's, jerk at a restaurant, jerk at the grocery store. Those are always interesting places. I call those places home field advantage. The child has home field advantage, okay? Like mine would throw a tantrum on the floor of the grocery store. And what I would do with a tantrum is I would just sort of squat down. And I'm kind of down there with them, and they're pitching a fit, and they're screaming. And the only piece for me, and I'm sure this is the issue for you, is shame. Like, they're making a scene in the grocery store, and all the other parents are going, "Oh my gosh, you must be a horrible parent," right? That's what we're thinking about each other, right? Anyway, so I imagine looking up, and all my clients are standing around me going like, look, see how you handle this. I want to engage them, but I'm not going to respond in any way. I'm just going to wait. And 9.8 out of 10 kids will ultimately kind of like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "Well, you needed a tantrum, so knock yourself out." I would take them out of a restaurant and not say a word. And I would sit on the front steps of the restaurant. In a minute, they go, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "Well, you need to scream, so you can scream out here. And we'll go back in when you're done." And they're like, "Okay, I'm done." All right, in other words, I want to think of a consequence, all right? So those are some examples. I want you to get the feel of it. And a lot of the feel is patience and managing your emotion, which we're going to talk about right now. Let's break this into some little steps and look at them, sort of slow it down like the Matrix, and sort of see what we're doing. Step 1, check the emotional rush. That feeling that you had, the one that we talked about with Bonnie, you know the feeling, okay? Step 1 is to resist those feelings and think. This is so parallel to what we talked about in the conflict talk with marriage. Those of you who weren't in the marriage conference, you've heard me say a couple of times this morning, it's golf, not tennis. What that means is usually with our spouses or with our kids, they do something to us and feel like we've got to top spin forehand right back at you, And I've told the marriage people, and I'm telling you regarding your kids, this is golf, not tennis. You don't need to hit it right back. Slow it down. Your emotions are getting all flooded. You're going fight or flight or coddle or control, and you want to go jerk a knot in her upstairs. Wait. Slow it down. See how the green breaks. Ask your caddy. I'm not sure what we should do here. They're not going anywhere. Time is on your side with this, and 90% of the time, there's no hurry. A mom asked me last night, my kids disobeyed before we left for the conference, and they'll be asleep when I get home. Is it okay to discipline them this morning? Absolutely. Well, they were like 9, 10 years old. Absolutely. Take your time, all right? Remember the reason that we have to take a time out, marriage conference goers? When you are triggered in your marriage or in your parenting, what's happening is you're thinking out of your reptile brain back here, your caveman brain, your amygdala, your hypothalamus, whatever, sort of what we used when we crawled out of the caves, And your only tools there are fight or flight or control or coddle. In other words, that's the reactive mean part of you. Now, if we're ever going to deal with our kids and help them learn, we're going to have to think. And as we said in the marriage conference, sometimes it takes you up to 20 minutes for your brain to start moving up to your frontal lobe so you can actually think strategically. We got to be strategic in this kind of a discipline. All right. So step 1 is beware that emotional rush. Like, I'm sick of these kids. The moment you feel that, you got to back off because no choice you're going to make then is going to be helpful. All right. So watch that. And trust that we can figure this out. Okay. We're smart. All right. Remember, I talked about Obi-Wan at the marriage conference. Remember Obi-Wan? He says to Luke, "Luke, trust your feelings." Right? Obi-Wan is wrong. Okay? What do you mean, trust your feelings? That's why, regarding parenting, that's why you had to give Luke and Leia to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and Bail Organa. You can't raise kids thinking like that. That's not how a good parent thinks. All right. So leave them. Step away. There's some time here. Check that emotional rush. Now, next step. We get a little creative. Again, take your time. We got to respond to them with a choice. What event awaits them? What is their or else? Remember, kids only learn through events because they're concrete little rats. So, as we alluded to last night, all you've done so far is issued a command. Tell them what to do. And like I said, it'd be great if kids did what we asked them to do if we issued a command, but they're not, a ton of the time. So we got to move on from that. Think about it, though, actually. Would you, as an adult, make a lot of the choices you make if you just were given a command and there was nowhere else? I mean, if they came on the radio and said, highway patrol's on strike, but you guys don't speed driving to Atlanta, I'm like, we'll see what this baby can do, okay? That's just me. Maybe I'm a sociopath. I don't know. But I kind of need the or else. Y'all pay your taxes or we'll be really mad. I'm like, well, knock yourself out because I'm not giving you anything, all right? I need an or else. And we sometimes expect our kids do not need an or else. So the next thing to do is not to intensify your command, as we said last night. The next step to get them out of this would be to give them a choice. Tell them the consequences if they disobey. What that sounds like is this. You've told them to get off the computer. You walk back in. They're still on the computer. You're still on the computer. That's the tone I want you to have. Okay. Well, you're just going to refuse, huh? I'm not really sure what to do with that. Let me think on it. No hurry. They're not going anywhere. I'm not going to fight you. But I am going to come back in a few minutes. If you're still on the computer, I think I'm going to take away your TV for 3 days. So you can choose. I'm going to go finish cleaning the kitchen. All right? I want to give them their options. And when you do, they'll ignore you or go ballistic or throw a tantrum, whatever, and we'll address that. But when you feel that resistance, don't fight them. Don't pull out some power card. Put on your gypsy scarves. Pull out your crystal ball. Do a little fortune telling. I see a cold, dark timeout room in your future. Loneliness, regret. I sense misery, sorrow. I see you on a beige 486 computer at the library that runs Windows 95. In other words, tell them their choices, okay? Now, this can be positive rewards too, all right? We're talking a lot about negative, but you can say, you do all these things and we'll be glad to get you so-and-so, all right? That's fine. As long as it's not bribery, okay? The difference between a reward and bribery is bribery has a dog in this fight. Reward is, tell you what, you got a bunch of B's and a couple of A's. You pull it up to all A's and, we'll get you that, video game, whatever. Bribery sounds like this. Come on, baby. I mean, you can do better than this. Like, you make better grades and we'll get you that video game. You feel the dog in the fight? Oh, please do this. It's like, I really need it, all right? To the degree that your need is in here, it's going to corrupt this, all right? So, attenders, you with littles and preschoolers, they're going to be slow to learn here. But there was a mom I was working with a while back, and she has a 3-year-old. Consistently, she can work with him and say, do so-and-so, and he resists. She'll go, I guess you don't want to play on the Wii anymore today then, huh? And he'll drop the controller and follow her. I guess you don't want to treat. Even 3, 4-year-olds can start to get this. Don't worry about that, all right? They're not going to have all the comprehension and understanding of older kids, but if that 3-year-old hits you, I want to sweetly, not angrily, put them in timeout for a few minutes, okay? And you may have to do that again and again, but they're building sort of that pattern, all right? Now, step 3, let them choose. They've resisted you. You've managed your feelings. You've given them the choices. Now back off and let them choose. Don't warn. Don't count. Don't say, I mean it. Let them choose. Now, why is this important? A couple of reasons. Number one is, with our choice presentation, here's what will happen. We've changed the conflict from you versus them to them versus their consequences, right? Don't get back in it, for heaven's sakes. We just got you out. If you get back in it going, well, come on, you better, if we're trying to persuade, we're getting all messy in there again, all right? We got them in the same position that reality will put them in, all right? So let them choose. If they dilly-dally and miss carpool, cool. Let them dilly-dally. Mom will take you to school later, and you'll get detention at school, and you'll be in timeout when you get home. But that's up to you, all right? And, yes, that will punish you as much as it punishes them. But that's what good parenting does, okay? But this cost will pay off, I promise, all right? Basic principle, kids will never learn about the fruits of their choices if they're being persuaded and nagged and demanded to choose our way. Okay? And hopefully if they choose, they will suffer some. Hopefully they will choose poorly some. Because biblically speaking, that's a gift. To the degree that I'm choosing and suffering from it, I can learn. I call discipline safe suffering. In other words, as children, kids get a chance to learn the way the world works only first time through with nice, safe, loving parents and non-lethal consequences. I mean, how great is that? They got it made. So why don't we grab that 3-year-old who's running the street and pop that leg? We're saying this pop reflects in a safe way what would happen to you if you didn't learn, okay? That's a gift. That's why the Bible says if you spare the rod, which does not mean literally a rod and corporal punishment, as some Christian books say. It means the force and the authority and the power of discipline. If you spare that rod, you hate your child. This is why. Because discipline is safe suffering. They get to suffer safely. All right? Step 4, follow through. In other words, make sure they experience that thing that you told them they would experience. Otherwise, you're a liar. I was visiting friends a while back of small kids, and this mom was fussing with her child, and she goes, okay, that's it. You're in timeout. But then they kept interacting. He goes, well, I don't want to go to timeout. She's like, well, then you need to look at your behavior. And I'm like, wait. You told him he was going to timeout. It wasn't like you will or you may. It's already happened. So were you bluffing? Were you sort of shucking and jiving here? Like, what was going on? And this is where a lot of us parents drop the ball. The child acts bad. We get mad, so we threaten a lot of big, nasty things. But then we regret it, and we feel guilty. It's too much hassle, and so we back off, and the terrorist wins. Okay, and we wonder why our kids are out of control. Right? So be really careful about that. A teen actually told me a few years back, he said about his parents, he said, yeah, they threaten a lot of things, but they don't ever really do it. It's actually kind of confusing, he said. So if we don't follow through, we're depriving them of tasting that bad fruit that is the only way they will learn. The least powerful tool you have in the world to deal with your kids is your words, which for some reason is our favorite tool. How many times do I have to tell you? Word. Keep the words to a minimum. You can persuade and cajole and coax and beg and threaten and demand and argue. And what are your kids going to do? Well, you know, Dad, that's a good point. I've never seen it that way. Now that you've explained it, I think I'll go do my homework so I can be successful one day. Really? We only learn through experience, okay? So obviously, therefore, it is important that we pick consequences we really are willing to follow through with. I hear these parents threaten these giant things like, if you don't stop screaming, there's no summer camp. I'm like, what? If you're late tonight, I'm selling that car. And everybody involved knows you're not going to follow through with this, right? All right? Besides, the consequences don't have to be really bad to teach, okay? My model of discipline is short, sweet, certain, to the point, painful, and here, try again. Okay, in other words, it's discipline. Yeah. Pardon me? Well, let me see if it fits into this, and I may answer it. Short, sweet, painful, to the point. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. Right, yeah. And I want to speak out against that theory of that it's literal. Go read Revelation. Revelation is a book like a gumbo that takes all of the metaphors in Scripture and puts them in one place. Scripture talks about lambs and lions and beasts and rulers and thrones and crowns and rods and the sea. And, you have these themes that are in all over the Old Testament and all over the New Testament. And they all pop up in Revelation. And one of the reasons it was written like that is it's kind of like code for people who only understood the kingdom could understand Revelation. Because what does it mean there's no longer any sea? Does it mean there's not going to be any more oceans? No. We know if you're a Hebrew and you know the Old Testament, you know what sea means. And rod, likewise, through the Psalms and the Proverbs and Revelation and the prophets, rod is a symbol of authority, almost like scepter. Change the word to scepter. All right, so it's as metaphorical as saying that he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So does he not own the cattle on the 1,001th hill? No, the 1,000 hills is a picture of the infinite breadth. All right, so he will rule with a rod of iron. Well, is it going to be iron or bronze? Well, not gold. That's not its point. It's powerful. All right, so it's a metaphor in Scripture for a theme. All right. I talked about spanking last night. You want me to talk more about it? Do you remember? Were you here for that part? Okay. And I do think that's a legitimate question in this. As I said, I don't have anything against spanking, and I spanked. But for me, it's a Coleman stove. It's something to use on the road. I remember one time Catherine was buckled into her car seat on the way to church in the minivan. Okay? And I look back there, and she's like buckled herself out of the 5-point harness, and she's walking around in the van. If you're 3 years old, the van is like a hallway. It's like walking through the cabin of a jet. You can sort of walk through the seats. And so I'm like, Catherine, you need to get in your car seat. She refuses. So I'm like, okay, I can't make her. Literally, I can't make her. So I thought, what's an option? What's a choice? Well, I don't have anything but the Coleman stove. Okay, and she's too little to discipline her tomorrow. So I said, here's the deal. If you don't get in your car seat, I'm going to stop the car. I'm going to get out and open the door, and I'm going to put you in your car seat after I spank you. And she kept walking around. I pulled the car over. I got out. I put her in her car seat, buckled it, and popped that fat little leg. And she starts squalling and screaming. Now, her big sister, who's on the way back seat of the van, who was a lot more compliant and a lot easier to manage, sits, and you can tell she's a psychologist's child. She sits in the back as Catherine's crying and goes, she chose unwisely. So I'm good with discipline as an intervention. I don't want it to be my go-to in the sense of you guys need to clean your room and I'm going to spank each one of you. I can be more efficient than that. I want them to lose something that doesn't directly relate to me. And spanking sort of is a very personal thing. With a strong-willed child, it's aggressive. And they're already too aggressive. So I want to get aggression out of it. I want them to run me laps till you're exhausted. I want them to be in isolation. I want something that's not me directly doing it to them. It's just less than efficient. I don't have anything directly against it. I do have something very against it past age 10. Past age 10, absolutely not. You need to come up with something else. That's too big to be striking them, all right? So it's not as cut and dried as I'm against spanking. It's like I said, I want the most efficient, elegant discipline possible. One that makes it very clear this is not a you and me fight. This is not I'm now going to punish you. This is, wow, okay, so you chose this and here's the cost to it. Okay? Yeah. So short, sweet, simple, to the point, painful, and here, try again. All right? And long-term consequences like you're grounded for 6 weeks or no summer camp, that's too far in the future. Don't take summer camp this summer. Take their dessert now. Okay? So that's our model. Once we feel the power struggle, we look for the cost. Let's tell you a couple more examples. What if they yell in timeout? I like timeout. They're yelling and screaming in timeout and banging on the door. How do you make them stop? You feel the helplessness? You can't, right? Here's the deal. You can yell all you want. Knock yourself out. timeout will start when it gets quiet in there. Your choice. Okay? I want to keep getting me out of the system. All right? Let's see. One mom told me that her child wouldn't go to school. So she said, okay, you want to stay home? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what that'll cost you, but knock yourself out. So the kids stayed home from school. And the mom worked a lot at home, and the child around lunchtime goes, I'm hungry, I want lunch. And she said, I lived with them as if they weren't home. I said, I'm sorry, you were at school. I don't cook lunches this time of day. And I lived the whole day as if, no, TV, I never leave the TV on when you're at school. So you're at school, so we're going to live the day as if you're at school. And I just love that creativity, all right? Let's stop there. I'm going to let y'all give me some examples, and let's do some questions. Yes, sir. Eric.
How do you avoid the power struggle just getting kicked down the road to the form of punishment? Like, you avoid the power struggle for the command, but then when it comes to the follow-through of the punishment, you could see how that would just shift the, like, well, you have to sit in this chair or you have to stay in this room, and now the power struggle is over the timeout or over whatever the natural consequence is.
In other words, you tell them to go to timeout and they refuse to go to timeout.
Yeah, like, is the solution to that, like, in the creativity of the punishment or in the humor that you can bring to it? Or, like, there's a lot that you say, and when you say it, it sounds funny, and it sounds like you could almost convince your kid to, like, yeah, I deserve this. But you could also see with another kid, like, now I've just moved the moment of the power struggle to a different 10 minutes down the road. Mm-hmm. How do you avoid the power struggle in the punishment, I guess, or in the consequence?
Yeah, okay. So I was staying with some friends about a year ago, and they had a kid, probably about 8, and he was really very strong-willed. And I'm very close to this family. And so he starts really acting up and cutting up. They wanted to take a family picture, and he just refused and bucked and, And so they asked me, they said, will you sort of coach us through some of this? And I said, yeah, it'd be kind of fun. So during this Saturday, I said, okay, well, you can't make him be in the family picture. Let's don't. But if you're not in the family picture, you need to do timeout for a while. And he's like, no. All right. So what do we do now, John? And I'm like, I don't know. And I told him, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to fight you and make you go to timeout. I know that at some point later on there's going to be something that you want with us, and you're not going to get that until you do your timeout. Well, anyway, lo and behold, 30 minutes later, they decide to make cookies. So he wants to be part of the cookie process. And I'm like, dude, you can be part of the cookie process when you do your timeout. And he's like, I don't want to. I'm like, good, that's cool. I'm not going to fight you. And it took a long time, okay, because he totally does not get this plan yet, and they're very inconsistent. Ultimately, we're all eating cookies, and he's standing there in the kitchen, and he goes to timeout. Now, the more I escalate it and power struggle it, the more I'm throwing a bunch of emotional baggage into it that's going to distort the fact that, ultimately at some point you're going to be in a place where people aren't going to make you do anything. And I'm not going to make him. I'm going to try to create this situation. And you're not always going to know what to do when they just say no. But as a parent, you hold every single one of the cards. You're all powerful. Like, they can't win because they need you. Okay? So if you wait, something will come along. And that is moms who feel like they've lost a lot of authority at home, and they're constantly dealing with the kids. And dad is somebody who the kids do respect. Then I want mom to go, you know what, I'm not going to fight you guys anymore. Be crazy Indians and tear the house apart. I'm going to let your dad come home, and he and I will deal with you together. And then you alpha them. But one of the things I want the dad to say is, look, I'm glad to come home and set you guys straight if you've not been listening to your mom, but I'm not okay with you treating her like that. And right here, this here's my favorite deputy. And if you cross her, you cross me. So do know, and you can always delay like that. Good question. Yes, sir.
My question is, how do you work with a compliant child who maybe has done something that needs to be addressed, or they have a character issue or so forth, but their response is shame. And you try to approach the child not with shaming. Intentionally, I don't want to shame this child in this discipline situation. I want to instruct them, to disciple them, and so forth. But their response is to shame themselves.
What does that sound like?
I'm bad.
Okay.
Me as a child, or the response is, oh yeah, that was so bad, and
how old?
12.
Boy or girl?
Girl.
What does she do with her emotions in general? Is she emotionally effusive? Is she dramatic? Does she?
Yes.
Okay. So in general, she is emotionally labile. The emotions are a lot of emotion going on.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, good. I'm asking those questions because to answer a specific question like that, we have to sort of know kind of what is the character structure of this child in general. So character ability number 6 last night, learning to manage the emotional world, is a huge one for her. In other words, being able to have an emotion and it not define the day. One of the things that I want to do with a child who goes real dramatic is I want to remain connected to them, of course, but I want to X-1 their reaction a bit. In other words, for a child who's really kind of histrionic meaning that we lead with our emotional foot, right? With a child who's kind of histrionic, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm so bad, I'm so terrible. I want y'all's position to be one that says, oh, like you're feeling all sorts of like shame and I'm a horrible bad person and I stink, and that is called shame, by the way, I would tell her. I'm really sad that that's what you feel like you need to do to yourself. I don't really care. That is an awful way to feel. You want any help with that? In other words, I want to sort of like give her a little bit more of the responsibility of, okay, you're getting tumbled into this. What do you want to do with it? And like I was talking to the couple in the back last night, I also want to begin to welcome her to the adult world in the sense I'm going to go, one of the things we got to make sense of, since she's 12, one of the things we got to make sense of as you get older, I would talk to her person to person, human to human. We're going to talk about this next talk when I talk about dealing with teenagers, which a 12-year-old girl is a teenager, correct? One of the things that's hard about adulthood is you fail all the time. You screw up all the time. I feel like that I did a pretty good job in Tulsa last month. The month before that, I was in Fort Worth. I think I learned more from the conference than they learned. I had to learn some lessons. It wasn't my best. And I kind of had to think, wow, what is my takeaway from this? And part of me wanted to go, man, I'm terrible. Man, I'm a lousy speaker, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of had a challenge as to what I'm going to do with that. You kind of have that a lot in your life. Like, what are you going to do with that? So we kind of want to be a part of that with you. In other words, don't get into the, oh, baby, it's not that bad, or no, we forgive you, or trying to talk her out of it. I kind of want to come alongside of her as a fellow adult and go, yeah, that is a hard thing, isn't it? I mean, we kind of all deal with that, don't we? And we kind of have a question, like with a younger child from last night, it was like, yeah, we have a question of what we're going to do when that shame part pushes on us. Are we going to push back? I'm making it a little more sophisticated for her since she's a 12-year-old girl, not a 10-year-old boy, all right? But I want to kind of get curious about that with her. Maybe even tell her stories of your own life. But no one will be able to push back on that shame in her life but her. So she's going to need to have some stewardship of going, wow, what am I doing with this? Now, remember I told my kids who were younger, when they would, shame themselves, I'd say, you're doing your job. Your job is to fail. Welcome to the club. So you fail and you learn. With a littler kid, you can do that. With an older kid like this one, I want to get her to join every one of us has this question. So I want to talk to her in the human-to-human part and go, this is hard. Thoughts on that? All right, good. Yeah, you bet.
One of the things, just kind of following up with what Rich was saying, I feel like this model that you are presenting we have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, both boys, and I can see sort of the ocean that is between them as far as where we are parenting a little bit, and how this model creates a culture of being able to, when they are older, they will already have language for some of the choices that they will make when they are older. That, like you were saying, obviously spanking is not appropriate when they're older at all, but I just love the way this kind of sets the stage for what we are facing and will face in years to come, of just being able to communicate. I mean, I just love it because it's giving me some new words to think about how to parent my 11-year-old, which will then, when he is older, we've already got this culture going in our home.
Precisely.
Of
you're running your home like a safe, suffering reality. We're training them to deal with adult life.
Right, and then what he was saying about shame, I just think that is so important, because we have our oldest son really struggles with that for little things. I'm bad, I made this bad choice, I said this bad word, or whatever it is, and then shame is just on his head and on his shoulders all the time. And just one thing that we struggle with is just really sifting through that with him and helping him believe what the Bible says about him is true. I mean, and
how old is he?
He's 13, and it's just he's very 13.
I would definitely have a similar dialogue with him.
Yeah.
In other words, a parent thinks about a child, how do I help them stop suffering or shaming? As they get into teenager, we're going to talk in a minute about one of the things that we do with teenagers is we really relate to them both as parent but also as peer. And I want you to talk to him kind of like they're talking in a, this would be a great job for dad. It'd be sort of like, you guys are driving to the ball game or something. Go, I screwed up at work the other day, and I felt like so embarrassed. And I thought about you, son. I thought about, like, sometimes when you screw up, how much you can feel terrible about yourself. And I was thinking, this is what he feels. Feels terrible, doesn't it? And I want to talk to him human to human kind of about that emotional world. I really had to sort of ground myself and go, okay, wow. Like, am I needing some loving? Do I need to call your mom or one of my friends? What does the Lord believe about me? I had to kind of fight back on that and see if will he talk to y'all? Is he a 13-year-old boy, or is he a talker or a grunter?
He grunts, and then in the right moment he will talk.
Okay, good.
In the moment.
Good.
I mean,
he'll give you something. Those little moments will be transformational for him. But I'm glad this model, you're getting the model. The model is, how do we prepare our kids to do adulthood? Remember, I came up with this model by doing therapy on adults and then swinging it backwards. Do you have a question?
No, I just appreciate this, because I feel like it's just shifting my thinking a little bit, and I appreciate.
Good. That is my goal. I'm glad. Yes.
So any advice on, we have 3 kids, 14, 10, and 6, and just as different as the oceans are. It's funny because they all have their favorite parent, sort of. So our middle prefers dad, so I will discipline because I'm the one with them much more. And then she baits me, I'm telling daddy, and you're mean to me. And, and I try to walk away, and it's just constant to be hurtful. I mean, she says things to be hurtful, and then she feels bad about it. But it's, so how I try to not react. Although
how old is she?
She's 10.
Okay.
So how do I, because I don't like saying, well, when your dad gets home, we'll deal with this. I hate that. Like, I can handle this myself. But but she that's kind of, and he can even be at the house, and I will discipline her, and he'll be somewhere else doing something, and it's like she runs to him to get, I think, at me. I don't think it has anything necessarily to do with him. I think it's more, I don't like
Derek,
you.
You want to join this party? Are you going to get in the car and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you?
It's mostly
what
how
do you
I
do?
respond
What do
to
you
her.
do? What does he do, either one of you, when she runs to him?
a lot of times he doesn't know, and so she'll be upset. She's very dramatic. It's all about, she's classic middle child and loves the attention. So she'll be upset, and he's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "Don't coddle her. Don't love on her right now."
All right, ultimately, at the end of the day, do y'all arrive at the same place? Can you be on the same page? Okay. So the same page we need is, let's throw out a couple of principles. For you guys to know when she comes all hysteric, that step one is we don't really triangulate in our family. You have a problem with mom, so you run to dad. We don't do that. This is Derek talking. I don't think I really want to intervene into this until I talk to your mom. So I want you to sort of try to reach inside and kind of contain all those emotions you're feeling. What's her name? Ainsley?
Ainsley.
I want you to reach inside and try to contain all this because you're really upset, and I'm not going to get upset too. I'm going to go talk to your mom, and we'll figure it out. Okay? Now, in the meantime, as you resolve it, I assume this pattern goes on a lot, and I assume that ultimately you do land in the same place. So you might have a conversation with Ainsley and say, you may say this, Dad, this whole run to me because you don't like mom thing, I think that's going to need to stop. I don't think that I'm going to play that. In fact, if you keep doing it, I think next time you do it, I'm going to discipline you, regardless of what mom has said. And I want to set some limit on that triangulation. Triangles are terrible in families, not helpful. When she throws the threat to you, it'll be tempting for you to be sassy pants back.
The apple doesn't fall from the tree.
Right. That's fine. You just go tell your dad. That's what I would do. I would want you to live out of more of a position of power than that. I want you to go, well, I don't think I'm going to really comment on that. Well, let's let what goes around comes around and see how this lands. In other words, remember, a power struggle is a child challenges your authority. I'm going to go tell Dad. And you attempt to prove it. Well, fine, you do that. Now, what that says is, my authority is something that's questionable, and I need to kind of buff up. I'm going to kind of go, okay, tell him, and we'll see what goes around comes around. I don't think I really want to interact with you when you're doing that. That just feels kind of tacky. Not going to do it. So I'm going to keep my cool. Now, what that's going to set her up for is a lot more effective intervention later on when she talks to him and all that. That's a fun question. All right, let's do one more and then take a little break and come back and do our next talk, and then we'll do a lot more Q&A.
Okay, I think you need to do an entire conference on 3-year-olds.
Pardon me?
I think you need to do an entire conference on 3-year-olds.
Yeah, right.
Based on yesterday and today. But going off of a little bit of what you're talking about over here with the reducing a power struggle by putting off that kind of discipline, what do you do when, if I told the child they can't be part of...
And this one's 3?
This one's 3.
Remember, you're in an attender stage.
Yes. So I'm at the attender stage, but you gotta, she's a 40-pound 3-year-old who everything with her is big and everything with her is aggressive. So if I say you need to go to timeout before you're part of this, I then get hit. Or if we send her to timeout, she then bangs on doors, and she's all in whatever she's doing. Mm-hmm. How do you find, first we've gotten to the point where timeouts just don't work. It's a hug it out because it's the only way that our walls and everybody involved is kind of protected. How do you de-escalate to the point where, and it's not, basically how do you get to the point where you can help her get out of the Hulk rage monster that sometimes when that consequence is involved, she turns into? How do you bring it down from that point?
Okay. And are y'all pretty much on the same page with it? Y'all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So go back to your timeout thing. You put her in a room? We've
kind of tried every space of timeout.
Yeah.
That a little, even somebody said soft space. So we let her create a soft space she could go to if she was feeling insane. that lasted for about a moment, and then the steps we tried,
And what
then
happened?
a room we tried.
How'd you give up on that?
She just kept running out and then attacking and, like, getting angry or running to and, like, trying to grab at. And I mean, I hope I'm not the only one child that does. Somebody else nod, please.
I'm asking questions to help me learn.
Yeah,
right
so
now.
mostly just because, and we have a small house, so we don't really have, she kind of has to be in space. There's not really a whole lot of place that she could go where she can't cause damage.
Damage, like she breaks the sheetrock, like what?
Yeah, she's banging pretty hard on doors. Like, we've had
Has she broken the doors?
No.
Broken her hand?
I think she was maybe about
what
a couple
I'm thinking
months older.
This.
She might get
And
there.
this, I can just give you a principle or two because there's some complexity here I can't get all of. You won't be able to do this every time, but I want to look for times in which you have a Sunday afternoon, or flexibility, to where you can put her in a timeout room and hold the doorknob with your hand, pull up a chair, bring your Kindle, and sit there for 35 minutes if you have to. Yeah. Look for those times. Remember what the woman told me when I said, what do you need from a parenting conference? The one with the 3-year-old, she said, hope. Right? In other words, give me hope that this is not going to always be this way. 3-year-olds are bringing very, very little internal structure to the party. Internal structure is the part of me that can go, oh my gosh, this traffic jam is driving me crazy, but, okay, wait, I can put on some nice music. I'm not going to be late. It's going to be, and we can calm ourselves down. 3-year-olds can't do that yet. So you're their only resource to calm them down, and that doesn't always work for them. And you get a 3-year-old who's kind of strong-willed and out there, and you're going to be saying, what I need from a parenting conference is hope. Okay? So that sense of futility is part and parcel of this process. Do not despair on it. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with your child. Every day that goes by, she will gain more of that gray matter. Okay? So that's one of the reasons I make this distinction is because attenders just have a different universe. And it's not like, oh my gosh, are we doing it bad? But I do want to look for times in which you can alpha her and say, this is not what's going to happen in here. And you can, in our house, and you can tantrum and scream, and you can punch holes in the wall, and you can, like, rip the seat off the toilet. You can do whatever you need to do. We're not going to let you out until you calm down. And I may come in there and hug you a little bit and kind of try to connect with you, but then I'm going to close the door again, and I am going to set this limit. And you're not going to be able to do that all the time. A lot of times she's going to, quote, unquote, win. You're not going to be able to manage it. As she gets older, she will settle some, I believe. That's what I usually see with 3s. And most of the questions that are like this, it's like the twins. It's like they're all 3, okay? The terrible 2s, one of my therapist friends says, we don't have the terrible 2s anymore. We have the terrible 3s, all right? So notice the questions of the we're out of gas, no hope, there's no way we can solve this, what do we do, doc questions. People have these little kids. They're attenders, right? That process of you discipline and teach and they start to internalize it and learn just really get started with the parenting age once they're 5, 6, and on. That's where we can really push more on it. I want you as an attender to begin creating the principle. And don't judge your success based on how much she gets it. What she needs from y'all is the restraint and the patience and the constancy of presenting these themes. All right? And it's not going to be if you do it right, she's going to stop today. She's in a developmental process, and literally as she gains more gray matter, she'll be able to do it more frontal lobe. She doesn't have any frontal lobe now. She's just all id. Yeah, good. Right. Well, that's one of the reasons that I really put very clearly that attender stage, because you guys are in a different category than the rest of us. Okay? But they do grow up. All right. Let's take a break for, can y'all do a 10-minute break? Keep it a little shorter, because we have to stop on time today. All right, thanks.